Hey again, YouTube Nutjob with Machete back with a review for you. What I've got here is the SCH112. This is Schrade's Shasta McNasty. This knife was designed by Joshua Waggoner, or if you want to say it in the old German style, Waggoner. Waggoner. Only reason I know how to say it, even approaching correctly, I had a chance to have a little back and forth with Josh on his thoughts on the design, on the final product, a couple of tips he gave me on the sheath and on how to carry this thing so it's a little bit more comfortable in the hand. So I'll share those with you as we go along. So why don't we take a look at the knife first? Well, it is huge. This thing is a half-pound of scary steel. Now, you guys remember my FGX Karambit. This is based off of the Cold Steel Steel Tiger, I think. Well, side by side, overlaid, the Shasta McNasty is one big hunk of steel. A lot of guys are, when they're holding it, they're noticing, it feels, when you're doing this style, that style, hold on it, the handle feels too small. One of the tips from Josh is, this knife is designed for Filipino style, kind of like an arnis style hold where you got your thumb on the ramp, where he was telling me that the Shasta, which by the way he did not name this thing, is designed for a hammer grip. So what that does is it actually moves my hand up off the sharp edges of the blade. Now you don't have to worry too much about the back of the blade here, because it's actually not sharpened. And there's a reason for that. The reason for that is so that it fits in the sheath, and the two little knobs that actually retain the knife in the sheath, well, you need the unsharpened portion so that spread those knobs apart, and when the knife's actually seated in there, it doesn't just pop out. I guess the original sheath design was to have the retention be the molded part up top, kind of like your standard Kydex sheath, where it's basically a pressure retention, but this is, I guess, a little bit easier for production. What about the knife? Let's get back to the knife. Back to the knife. Well, you got to admit, it's the claw that would put a Deinonychus to shame. I think it's a 90-degree angle from the handle up to this point. I'll put the specs and everything below because I honestly cannot remember them, but let me put it this way. Interior edge is a sharpened, essentially reaping hook, and the exterior edge up to about here on the knife is also sharpened. Why? That's actually more traditional. We're used to, North Americans, are used to a lot of the single edge Karambits. There's so many on the market, and I was actually really interested in this one because it was double edged, because that not only allows you to slash with the front edge, but you can slash, disarm with the back edge, chop with this thing, and in fact, in the demonstrations, you'll see that I do exactly that. And it does a sick amount of damage. So I already told you it's a half pound and all that stuff. Let's look at the handle. You see it's slightly molded. This checkered plastic on there, it's not very rubbery or grippy. It gives an okay grip for the overhand, and it gives a pretty decent grip for the underhand if you're doing a hammer fist. I might fatten it a little bit with some of the Onyx grip tape that you see on some of my other machetes and knives, just to give me a little bit wider purchase, because I'm noticing that my hand, it feels a little flat, even adjusting it to the proper grip for this knife design. I think I want a little more girth to it, just so that I won't get fatigue if I have to use this for a long period of time. And admittedly, I think I might even take this out to the farm, take it out on the bush and just use it as a reaping hook for a little while just to see how that works out. Now, the balance on it, obviously it's designed as a Karambit, so it's designed so that you can do forward and back. But given the overall size of it, Josh mentioned in Rob Rick's video in the comments section that some of his students have been calling it the Darwin Claw because even with the trainer, it's coming back around to bite them. And admittedly, if this thing does come back around and bite you, just poked myself, it's going in easily a ½ inch. So let's take a look at the sheath. Now it's on my belt, so you're gonna have to bear with me. You know what, why don't we instead do some movie magic? And I'll show it to you in a second. So here it is in the sheath. At first I really didn't like this sheath design. I now see why Schrade did what they did. There's a little bit of rattle in it. The knife doesn't obviously sit perfectly secure. But if you wanted to carry this like as an EDC, it would probably be worthwhile to look into maybe doing your own Kydex sheath or a leather sheath, something like that for it. But let's see if I can get it zoomed in. See those two little knobs there? The knife, when you draw it out, spreads them apart, and that's actually the retention. When you put it back in, sharpened section to unsharpened section, spreads them apart, and then the knife seats itself in there. Now, admittedly, you have to get used to this. Because of the curve of the knife, your first few times you might snag it. Don't try and force it in, just back the knife out. See, even there. Back the knife out, and push it in correctly. Now you can see that that took a little bit of time. But once you get used to it, you can get it in and out without too much difficulty. Admittedly, I was confused when I got it, because you could see it's just essentially a cover rather than a sheath. But this cutout here is designed so that you feed your belt through it and the knife sits flat. It actually sits inside your belt. Admittedly, for me, it took me a little while to figure out where to put it. Putting it up front, kind of like a jambia, sitting, you kind of poke yourself in the groin. Putting it right alongside didn't feel quite right. Putting it just slightly back a little bit, that just felt like the right position. Like I could just draw it, go into a guard, and be fine. It's actually, when it's on your belt, it is comfortable enough that you could conceivably wear it out. I've been testing it for the last couple of days, just wearing it almost everywhere. And the only place that it wasn't really comfortable wearing this sheath, other than people looking at you funny, was in the car, because the seat molded around a little bit and pressed the sheath in. So that's just one thing. Now, we'll do a little bit of movie magic. Just tuck my shirt in a little bit here so you can see it. Having it here just felt a lot more comfortable because I could draw it in the underhand grip, or admittedly I'm still getting used to this sheath, so trying to get it back in. Or I could draw it in an overhand grip fairly easily, just from the same position. But I mean, the couple of tips that Josh gave me for the sheath, those two little nubbies I showed you, you could always just kind of shave off a little bit of plastic from them to allow this to basically be guided directly into that spot, and then it'll spread it apart, which I will do on this sheath. Now, how did the knife come? From the factory. Because admittedly, I haven't customized this thing yet. I wanted to show it to you guys as Schrade intended it, not quite as Josh intended it. So let's check the edge. So let's test the factory edge. We might as well start with the back. Now, admittedly, this is after having done some abusive tests to it, so maybe it'll be slightly less sharp, but let's see. Back edge is actually not that bad. Let's see about just doing draw cut. It's actually not bad. And I mean, of course, when you penetrate through, it shreds. Admittedly, when you guys see the test, you're actually, or rather, I hope, you're going to be kind of impressed with the damage that this thing can do. But I wanted to show you guys the kind of power you can get using a hammer fist grip and just driving straight down. It basically makes this thing like an axe when you're chopping with it. So, tell you what, why don't we go to the tests which is a pork loin test. I got a ballistics gel test, the wood chopping tests, and oh yeah, I decided this time to go with a little bit of cold steel style test. So this is fairly thick cardboard tube, not the huge tube like they use at Cold Steel. Those things are just expensive, but it's the kind that you can't really, ow, you can't really easily bend or break. It's not like this is a wrapping paper tube. This tube is fairly strong, fairly thick, and this thing will penetrate into it. You know what, why don't I just show you guys the test? So, I mean, there's not really anything I can say that you didn't see in those demonstrations. The pork, which, yes, of course, I'm going to eat it. I'm going to barbecue it. That was just kind of devastating. Now, normally I would just have the pork sit there, but this time I decided to kind of prop it up so that I could show you guys slashes and everything, and almost as if it were on a person. And yeah, holy crap. One of those chops went right through the pork loin, which admittedly is probably about 2 to 3 inches thick, and just chopped straight down into it. The ballistics gel, I mean, yeah, even the wood. Now, I gotta tell you, when you're doing something on the hard material, now, admittedly, the only way you could really get this on a person is if you're going into one of the large bones. It might happen if you hit both parts of the collarbone, the head, the leg, but when you hammer fist into something, and all the shock transfers down, your finger here gets a little bit beaten up. Not too bad, actually. Yeah, just a little bit red. I think probably those little mods that I mentioned will fix that a little bit, a little more cushioning. One of the things that you might notice is that the ring on this thing is huge. In fact, let me grab the FGX. So here's the FGX's ring, and here's Shasta's ring. Well, that doesn't look too bad, except I can almost fit the FGX ring inside of Shasta's ring. I think it was 1.25 inches round in here or something like that. Again, I'll put the specs. You know what, in fact, this time I'm going to put the specs right here, as well as the outside diameter. 5 millimeters thick steel, guys. But what Schrade did is on the inside of this, they kind of chamfered it a bit, which when you're doing your little quick flips, there's less material biting on you and there's a little bit more pressure. It might be a little bit less comfortable. As well, the drag from doing that makes it a little bit harder to control. In fact, even right there, that was a little bit hard to control. So, you know, that's just worth noting. I might have actually liked it a little bit of smoothing of the edges on the outside of the ring and leave the inside of the ring the way it was. But, you know, it is what it is. This is, I think I got it for about 40 bucks. And admittedly, for a $40 Karambit, this is actually pretty sick. The FGX, granted, this thing's plastic, right? This was like 15 bucks, but it's based on a $160 knife from Cold Steel. That's not super traditional. A lot of guys have been mentioning that they want something like Rob. Rob wants jimping up here. Kind of, you know, something like a thumb ramp like that so that he can do this. I might modify this and put a little bit on there, but yeah, for a $40 purchase, this thing is super sick and scary. First thing I did when I got this, besides trying to avoid chopping my fingers off, was grab a piece of cardboard, a little thin piece, just like this, and just look at it and go, you know what, I wonder. And yeah, that's the front edge. That's the back edge. This thing destroys that paper. I mean, yeah, this thing just chops through pretty much anything you put in front of it. And just like being able to do that on a thin piece of cardboard and have it shave off sections on the back edge is pretty damn sick. So, I mean, this thing is awesome, and for 40 bucks, I really, really can't go wrong with it. I hate the name, Shasta McNasty. If I remember correctly, that was a TV show as well. I can see maybe why they would want to call it McNasty, because it is big motherfucking McNasty. But you know me, I tend to name my knives. I might not always share them with you guys, but pretty much every single one of my knives, my machetes, and my axes has a name attributed to it. Most from either Norse mythology, or they're named after someone important to me, or an important event. Josh, I'm going to steal the name that you said you were you would have named it, which now I apologize because this is Indonesian and I don't speak any Indonesian, but I think it's Kekuatan. I'll put it here, and if any of you guys speak Indonesian, or Josh, if you're watching this, maybe tell me how to pronounce it correctly so that I can actually name this thing correctly. But yeah, the Schrade SCH112 is one sick, big freaking claw of a knife. And admittedly, you might not like it at first just because you're used to one grip or the other. Modify it how you want, or adjust your grip how you want. You will end up loving this thing in the end, and it is just awesome. If I put this thing through my arm, it's my own damn fault. Claw of Darwin. But yeah, this thing is great. And honestly, if you guys are into karambits, even if you're into the slightly smaller, more traditional styles, especially like the double edge or some of the higher end single edge ones, you will probably enjoy this thing a lot. Yeah. I love this thing. I'm just waiting for the time I put it through my forearm. That's about it, guys. As always, thanks so much for watching this video. If you like this video, feel free to click like. Feel free to subscribe for videos like this in the future. And as always, feel free to share this video as much as you want. Share it, share it, share it. That's about it, guys. Until next time, I'm Nutjob with a machete. Stay sharp.